All right, let's talk about an F-15 that honestly shouldn't even exist. We're going to uncover the story of a jet so advanced it felt like it came from the future. This was an experimental plane that quietly showed the world that fighter jets, well, they don't have to obey the traditional rules of flight.
I mean, just try to picture it. A jet that could pull off moves that would leave the best pilots in the world just scratching their heads. A machine that pretty much defied gravity and physics. And no, this isn't science fiction. It was very, very real for one very special F-15.
80%. Let that sink in for a second. To give you a real sense of what we're talking about here, this experimental Eagle cut its landing distance by 80% compared to a regular F-15. I mean, that's the difference between needing this huge, sprawling runway and needing something, way, way smaller.
Oh, but it gets even better. This thing could take off at just 42 miles per hour. That's basically highway speed. And then, when it was flying at nearly twice the speed of sound, we're talking Mach 2, it could steer using nothing but its engines. This wasn't just an upgrade, you guys. This was a complete rewrite of the rulebook.
So, the big question is, how on earth did this jet even come to be? Well, its story isn't about some epic dogfight. Nope. It was born from a very specific and, frankly, terrifying fear during the Cold War. Okay, so to really get this, we've got to rewind the clock. Let's go back to the 1970s. See, the U.S. Air Force had just realized it had a massive, critical weakness, one that could ground its entire fighter fleet before a single shot was even fired. The issue wasn't the jets themselves, they were great. It was where they lived. The military's biggest nightmare was this. What happens if a war starts, and the enemy's first move is to just blow up all our runways? Suddenly, your billion-dollar Air Force is completely trapped on the ground, useless. Yeah, this really hits the nail on the head. The reason this thing existed, it wasn't about dogfighting. It was about fear. It wasn't about being better than the other guy in the air. It was about making sure you could get into the air to begin with. And that fear, that's what sparked one of the most radical experiments in the history of flight. So here's the bottom line. The Air Force needed a fighter that had all the power and speed of an F-15, but, and this is the crucial part, it had to be able to take off and land from pretty much anywhere. Think short, damaged, busted-up airfields. They needed a top-tier fighter that wasn't chained to those long, perfect, and super vulnerable runways. And the solution they came up with? It was called the F-15 STOL/MTD. This was the very first version of this experimental Eagle, a special plane, a technology demonstrator, built for one reason, to solve this exact problem. Okay, I know, that's a mouthful of an acronym, STOL/MTD. So what does it even mean? Well, STOL is pretty straightforward. Short takeoff and landing. That was its main job. And the MTD part? Maneuver Technology Demonstrator. Fancy way of saying it was a flying laboratory, a test bed for a completely new way of flying.
So what they did was, they took a regular F-15B and basically performed some serious surgery on it. First, they added these special engine nozzles that could actually aim the jet's thrust. That's called thrust vectoring. Then, and this is my favorite part, they bolted on these little wings up front called canards. And get this, they were literally ripped off of F-A-18s and just slapped on. And to tie it all together, they installed this super advanced, revolutionary flight control system to make the whole Frankenstein's monster fly.
And the results? I mean, they were absolutely staggering. Your standard F-15, it needs a ton of runway. But this thing, the STL/MTD, it could get airborne at only 42 miles an hour and land in just over 1,600 feet. That wasn't just an improvement, it was a total game changer. And check this out, it could literally slam on the brakes while it was flying, in midair. It did this by using reverse thrust. Now, this was never going to be used in a dogfight or anything. It was purely a test feature. It was, like one person said, just the engineers flexing their muscles, just showing off what they could do. But wait, the story doesn't stop there, not even close. In 1993, NASA gets involved. They take over the project and they give it a new name, Active. And with NASA in charge, the mission changed. It wasn't about landing on busted runways anymore. No, now it was all about pure performance, pushing the absolute limits of what a jet could do. And a huge part of this new mission was a brand new upgrade, axisymmetric nozzles. Okay, another fancy term, but here's what it means. The old nozzles could only point the engine thrust up and down. These new ones, they could point it side to side too, in any direction. This basically gave the plane a rudder made out of pure engine thrust, and it worked even when flying faster than sound. So this thing got a serious makeover. They dropped in more powerful engines, they fitted those crazy new nozzles that could point anywhere, and they gave it a brand new digital brain, a fully fly-by-wire system that could perfectly coordinate this incredibly complex dance between the engines and the regular wings and flaps. And the results were just mind-blowing. I mean, within a few months, this jet was steering with its engines at supersonic speeds. By the time the program wrapped up, it was pulling off maneuvers at Mach 2, twice the speed of sound that pilots and engineers had always believed were just flat out impossible. But here's the thing. The real legacy of the F-15 Active wasn't just about the cool, flashy moves. It was the data. The program generated a mountain of information that completely changed how we think about flight control and aerodynamics. It didn't just add a new chapter to the playbook, it helped rewrite the whole thing. There's this fantastic quote that describes it as a digital brain telling engines and control surfaces how to dance in union. And that's just perfect, isn't it? It captures the pure elegance of it. This wasn't about brute force. It was about a smart, sophisticated computer blending everything together into one single fluid motion. Like a ballerina. But, a ballerina made of titanium and flying at Mach 2. And the stuff NASA learned was just incredible. For instance, they found that if you use the engine nozzles to make tiny adjustments instead of the big flaps, you reduce drag. That saves fuel, and it's easier on the plane's body. And maybe coolest of all, they proved you could actually fly the plane, in a pinch, using only the engines. Think about that for a pilot whose control surfaces get shot up in combat. That's not just a cool fact, that's a potential lifesaver. So you might be wondering, what happened to all this amazing tech? I mean, you look at a modern F-15, you don't see those canards or those wild nozzles. But that's the thing. Its legacy, it's still here. It's invisible, kind of like a ghost in the machine of modern fighter jets. And this is where it all comes together. See, other planes, like the Russian Su-37, use this kind of tech for what you could call brute force airshow stunts. Really impressive, but not the same thing. The F-15 Active was different. It was a flying supercomputer designed to collect super precise data. And where did that data go? Well, those algorithms, that software, it was poured directly into the brain of the F-22 Raptor. That's where the Raptor gets its insane agility. You can think of the F-15 Active as the secret school where the F-22 learned how to fly. So why didn't they just bolt this stuff onto every F-15? Well, the simple answer is it was just too much. The hardware was incredibly complex, it added cost, it added weight, and it was a total nightmare to maintain. It just wasn't practical for a whole fleet of frontline fighters. Its real value wasn't in the metal. It was in the lessons learned. And all of this leaves you with a really fascinating thought, doesn't it? The F-15 Active was this behind-the-scenes project that completely changed the game for the next generation of fighters. So it really makes you wonder what kind of impossible future-defining technologies are being tested in secret today? What's out there right now getting ready to rewrite the rules all over again?